Hi, everyone. I'm Jamie McGriff for KUTV 2 News. We have been following the Kouri Richins trial. This is day 15. Closing arguments and questions, all of that has wrapped up, and we have just learned within the last few minutes that the jury has reached a verdict, and we are supposed to be getting further word as well as when the jury is to return back into the courtroom in about 20 minutes or so. Joining me now for this podcast is former prosecutor Nathan Evershed, who's not affiliated at all with this trial or case in any kind of way. Thank you so much for joining us, Nathan. First off, the deliberations felt like it was just really quick. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, after 3 weeks, it looks like the jury has been really considering this evidence just in their own minds, which is what they had to do. They have not been able to talk to anybody about this, not to fellow jurors, not to spouses or friends or anybody. And so they went back into that jury room, and it looks like all of them are thinking the same thing, and we'll find out what that was.
Okay, so typically speaking, the time frame for jury deliberations, are they longer than what we've seen so far? Shorter? What are your thoughts there?
Oftentimes they're longer. When there's this much evidence, this many exhibits, hundreds of exhibits, 40 plus witnesses, so many hours of trial, and all of this, there's a lot for them to consider. But it looks like they've really been considering that over the course of many weeks. And come to find out, they all entered that room and they are all apparently on the same wavelength.
What could the outcome be based on the decision and the time in which it took the jury to reach this verdict?
It could be a couple things. It could be the state overwhelmed them with a lot of evidence, with an incredible argument, with a lot of things that they were able to put together. And now what the state has been able to prove is that this has now happened beyond a reasonable doubt. And they've been able to prove that over the course of weeks. Or they've been able to deliberate and make a determination that there's simply not enough there and that we don't need to go any further and therefore find not guilty. It's going to be one of those two things. This will not be a hung jury. There are 5 counts here, and all of them now have been made. There's been a determination made on all of them, whether that's guilty or not guilty. And so I guess their job is now completed, and they feel pretty satisfied with what their verdict is going to be.
One of the things I wanted to also talk to you about is the fact that with the jury reaching this verdict, you mentioned before we started this podcast that there may be more time in delaying to actually hear what that verdict will ultimately be. Why is that?
Well, it's always an estimation. Apparently, a verdict is in, they're giving a 20-minute warning of those things, but sometimes there's a family member of one of the parties that's not able to make it in, or sometimes something else can happen. So usually it might take a little bit longer for this to happen, and then they settle in, and then it takes a little bit of time to read the verdict form. So sometimes, in my judgment at least, these predictions of how long this might take usually are not that precise, but who knows, maybe it will be precise here.
Okay, and then with the jury making this decision on the verdict or reaching a verdict, for those who may not be familiar with how the process works, so the jury, when they make it back into the courtroom, what would happen after that point? Who would say what as far as presenting this information to the judge? Would the judge ultimately say what the verdict is? Would a representative of the jury do that? How would this work?
So when the jury comes back into the courtroom, they would hand the verdict form to the judge, who the judge would review it and then read it, or maybe hand it to his clerk to review it and then read it. The judge would make sure that everything is in order and is done. The judge will make sure that everybody has unanimously agreed that this is their verdict, and then the judge will read it, or the clerk will.
Okay. Going back now, talking about the trial, as far as some closing arguments here. One about the defense. There was a clip from the defense that garnered a few reactions from not only the jury, but the family and friends that were in attendance. Are we able to show that clip? All right, we're going to go ahead and show you that clip now from or about the defense.
The evidence proves that Kouri Richins murdered, attempted to murder Eric Richins, and that she committed 2 counts of insurance fraud and forgery. The evidence does not support any other rational explanation.
Okay, sorry about that. That was actually the prosecution. So talking about Brad Bloodworth saying that there is no other rational explanation for the evidence, how effective is that argument in persuading a jury?
It's extraordinarily effective. It's something where the jury wants to be satisfied that there's this man, we know how he died of fentanyl, and how was this ingested? And Mr. Bloodworth in his closing said it was not suicide, he had no reason to kill himself, he loved his kids, he had success in his business, he had a lot of things to live for, and it wasn't accidental, he wasn't a drug dealer. So in the absence of that kind of evidence, the only thing that is pointing, according to Mr. Bloodworth, towards why this even happened is murder. And so I think it's extraordinarily effective, because that's the question the jury's going to have. It's like, is it possible that this could have been done another way? And when the prosecution says, no, it's not possible, there's literally no evidence that shows that, I think it's a great argument for them.
You know, the prosecution showed the following quote from the Poisoner's Handbook by Deborah Blum, saying, quote, "A gun may be fired in a flash of anger, a rock carelessly hurled, a shovel swung in a sudden fury, but a homicidal poisoning requires a calculating intelligence," end quote. What is your take on that?
It goes right to their theory. It's a great quote for them. I mean, in human nature, you would understand a flash of anger. You'd understand someone throwing a rock in a fit of passion. But poisoning is something different. Poisoning takes cool, calculated, premeditated, deliberate planning that goes into all of this. And that just feeds into the theory of, well, who would do that? It would be someone like this individual that's been charged, Ms. Richins, who has set things up from their closing argument, which I found to be tremendously effective. Showing all of this evidence from December to January to February, showing all of this motive, all of this planning, all of this conniving, all of this manipulation of things. And who would do that? It would be someone that's quite intelligent, that knows what they're doing, and they're trying to show that she can't get away with it.
Okay, and then talking about the defense. Now we're talking about the defense. There's a clip
Yes.
here from the defense that garnered a few reactions, as I mentioned earlier, from not only the jury, but the family and friends who were in attendance. Let's take a listen.
And by the way, if Kouri was as motivated by money as they would have you think, would she really have killed her wealthy husband to run off with the handyman who lived for free in one of her houses? If Kouri was going to kill Eric for money, she certainly would not have done it on the night that she believed she had just secured a multi-million-dollar property.
What kind of strategy is this?
It's a great strategy. I mean, if the defense is able to persuade the jury that the motive really isn't there when you kind of pick away at it, then that really kind of cuts out the legs underneath the prosecution's argument, which is motive is a huge part of their argument. And if they're able to dissuade the jury to say, like, there's no real financial motive with all of this, that there is, in fact, this is going to actually backfire on her, it doesn't make any sense, it's a great argument to make.
Okay. Wendy Lewis says Carmen Lauber, Kouri's former housekeeper, held all the cards. Do you agree with that?
It's a great argument for them. You would understand. I think Carmen Lauber is the most important witness for the prosecution. And if this is a quick verdict for the prosecution showing guilty, it really goes to show that that jury probably really found Ms. Lauber to be credible, because it'd be really surprising if they were to come back and say guilty and not find her credible. And I've seen this before with jurors really believing people that were drug dealers or different things happening to find them to be credible. So you would understand what would happen with the defense in this case is that they're trying to undercut Carmen Lauber by saying she's holding all the cards. I think there's a reference to a get out of jail free card, about others, all these benefits. You can't believe her. And so it's a great argument for them to make, like, you can't believe Ms. Lauber. And if they're able to successfully prove to the jury that you can't, then they're a lot closer to a not guilty verdict. So I think how the jury felt about Ms. Lauber will be revealed here with this verdict that's upcoming.
One of the things that we noticed while following the trial was the fact that there was a moment where the judge spoke to Kouri Richins and said, you know, do you understand that you do have the right to go to the stand or not? And she expressed that she understood. Why do you think, based off of your expertise, what you've seen in trials, would Richins do something like this by opting out?
That's a great point. So Ms. Richins did not testify, I'm certain, because her attorney said, you're not going to testify. It's a new trial if she does testify. It's cross-examination from the prosecutors. They're just making another closing argument through this defendant. And they're probably able to get into a lot more exploratory terrain with her on the stand. And then someone like, you know, having that hinge upon her affect and her personality and how the jurors view her, it's like lighting a dynamite stick and holding onto it. You never know what's exactly going to happen or how something's going to go off. So it's enormously risky, and the judge would have to verify with her, because there might be an appeal on this issue. Do you understand that you have the right to testify? Are you following your attorney's advice by not testifying? I'm going to find that waiver is knowingly and intelligently made. You're waiving your constitutional right, and you understand that, and then therefore she didn't testify.
So very risky to
Very
have her go
risky.
up on the stand.
Yeah, it's just too
Okay.
risky. It's so much better. It's so much better of a calculated decision to just say just what they did in their closing argument. You know, the defense made all the arguments that they could. Okay, they presented the cross examinations and the arguments and the evidence that they could. The last thing they want to do is now put their client up on the stand and then say, okay, well, we've been able to make these arguments, get this evidence in, do all of these things, and now we're going to blow all that up because she's now taking the stand. Now she's subject to cross-examination. It just would have been probably a disaster, and so that's one reason why they didn't do that.
How daunting of a task would it be for her team to come up with a strategy of whether or not to have her take the stand or not? Would that be something, do you think it would have just been automatic, no, this isn't going to happen, or let's wait and see how things progress throughout the trial?
So I've seen both just in my career where I've seen defendants take the stand, and it's been really good. I had a client take the stand not too long ago in a jury trial I had, and he was acquitted, not guilty. I mean, it does happen. The rule of thumb is that you generally don't want that to happen. I can tell you, these are two experienced, three very experienced defense attorneys. I think that they took one glance at this case and thought, we're never going to put her up on the stand, ever. It's just way too risky. And I think that decision was made a long time ago.
What are your thoughts about the trial as a whole? Do you feel as if it should have gone longer based off of what you've seen so far, or do you think the timing of it was actually just right?
I think the timing was right. I think it's fair for us to now tip our caps without even knowing what the jury verdict is going to be. It took guts for those investigators to pursue this. It took a lot of guts for the Summit County Attorney's Office to file this. We don't know what's going to happen here, but we do know that office, and this is something I don't know if the general public even knows, that the Summit County Attorney's Office is just a handful of prosecutors. I think they have one courtroom up there in the 3rd District of Summit County. That sheriff's office is rather small. For them to take this on, which is an enormous task, which is so layered and multi-leveled, and there's family issues, boyfriend issues, financial, estate problems, all of this stuff. I mean, all of these things, text messages, all of this stuff. It's such a hard case to put on, and then to put it on and then actually present it pretty well and effectively with all of those exhibits. It's a huge task, and is one I would have to say one of the best well-presented jury trials I've ever had the privilege of watching. And I would even say on the defense side, they made all of the arguments that they had to make. They did the cross-examinations that they had to do. It's not easy to be in that kind of situation, and you just have this enormous amount of evidence, just like a wave coming at you. And I mean, it's one thing to kind of dismantle one leg of a prosecutor's case, but when they have maybe 12 legs, that's kind of like, it's a tough task, and they did it. And I just want to say, there's so much that is said about judges and all of this other stuff. Well, this is a great thing to have this case with this kind of notoriety, to have a judge like Judge Mrazek that was cool and calm and collected. He's been dealing with this for so many years. So anyway, I would just have to say, just as a member of the bar, I think it was well done, well presented. I don't know what the verdict exactly is going to be. I have my guesses, of course, but we'll find out. But
We have about 4
everybody played
minutes,
their
you
part.
know? Yeah, we have about 4 minutes until we would get probably a better idea
Yeah.
when the jury is expected to return to the courtroom. But you mentioned something about the judge. Let me circle back to this.
Yeah.
Because the judge, even though you mentioned that he was calm, cool, and collected throughout the course of this trial, there were some moments where he seemed a little irritated.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. And guess what? He's also human, you know.
Yeah.
And so I think the thing about this is that, one, you're managing all of these witnesses and all of these attorneys and all of these exhibits, and you're trying to keep it fair. You're following through with the rules of evidence, and there's multi-layered to that as well. But from what I've seen, and I didn't see every nook and cranny and everything about this, but I saw enough to see that, you know, ruling on things, showing understanding to other people, being patient and whatnot. But I did see, for example, in the closing, to your point, you know, a judge doesn't always just have to be smiley or just soft or whatnot. Like, if he has an opinion or she has an opinion, they're able to state this and say, I'm overruling this objection. Nobody take it personally, etc. And so so I've had a lot of cases in my trial, in my career, a lot of trials. I've never had anything like this with this amount of complexity. I don't think most attorneys have ever put on anything like this. I don't think most judges have ever tried a case like this. And to kind of go out into that unknown territory and do it in a way that was done well, fully funded by Utah taxpayers. You know, these are all public servants. Even the attorneys on the defense side are being paid by Utah taxpayers, particularly up there in Summit County. It's like, I think everybody should have a great deal of gratitude for, like, this is how the justice system works. This is our American government at play. This is a critical organ that we trust and we believe in, and it was well done. I mean, see, and that's the thing. I remember as a prosecutor, people would say, you know, you can't control the verdict. You can't. All you can control is the arguments that you're making and making sure you're putting forth the evidence that you can. That's what they did. And as the defense, you can't control and keep out all those bad arguments for you and bad evidence for you, but you can make the arguments that you can, and they did. I mean, I can't imagine the defense not making an argument that otherwise could have been made. They made all the arguments that they could, cross-examined it, and then we believe in the system. There are 8 random people up there in Summit County that have weighed this for hours, that have seen this for multiple weeks, that have no connection to this case. They're likely not lawyers or other things. They're just coming in out of their goodwill and time to set aside all of this and to make a verdict. And no matter what it's going to be, we should trust it. The system played out, and this is what we're privileged to have in the United States of America.
One thing that you mentioned about everyone presents their arguments as best as they can. Have there been moments, even in your experience, where you felt, even after the verdict was reached in a case that you're handling, that maybe there was an argument that you probably could have used but didn't?
Every time.
Every time.
Because you're just human and you're so personally attached. I mean, and my heart goes out to everybody here. Like, when I was a prosecutor, I even get choked up thinking about it, thinking about, you know, these murder victims, and you have their family, and like their hope is just in your hands, and it's so heavy. And then you come back like, oh, maybe I should have said this, and like you take it so personal, like if it's going to be like the right verdict or whatnot. And so every time, and that's part of the sharpening the saw. You know, just trying to get better, trying to understand, like, this is a better way. I could have done this. You learn. I'm sure there are things that these attorneys all learn through the whole process about, you know, how to do things better. So Yeah, every time I did that.
All right, well, thank you for that. Okay, so the time right now is 6:20. Once again, if you are just joining us now, we have been talking about the Kouri Richins trial, the closing arguments, and discussing that at length, and also with it being day 15. Shortly after we began, or even before this newscast or podcast, we got word that the jury has reached a verdict, and we were told that it was going to be around 6:20, around that time, when the jury should be making their way back into the courtroom. It is now 6:21. Checking in with my producer to get the nod. Still have not heard word yet, so everyone is standing by. From what I understand, the jury has not entered yet, but at this point, we are keeping tabs on this, and of course, we will have more on 2 News at 10 o'clock, so make sure you join us then. And of course, on KMYU and KJazz during the 7 and 9 p.m. newscast. One more question for you, Nathan. After trials wrap up, after you have the defense along with the prosecution teams, they have all of their information that they have gathered, jury makes a decision. What happens with all of the evidence? What happens with all of the information, with all of the notes? Do they just hold them until something may happen down the road? What happens there?
Yeah, should there be any kind of guilty verdict? And again, the jury may split and say guilty on some counts, not guilty on the others. I'd be surprised if that were to happen, based off of the speed of all this. But the court retains it. The court retains it because if she's found guilty on anything, there will be an appeal. This will go through our appellate process, the Utah Court of Appeals or the Utah Supreme Court. There will be arguments, and there's going to need to be the preservation of these exhibits for people to refer to in case that needs to come up again. So if she's found guilty, look for sentencing to happen in about 2 months, maybe 45 days. And then from there, look for about, some years of appeal as well.
Some years of appeal.
Yeah, I mean, so it'll probably take possibly up to a year or 6 months or so to get something filed. And then there'll be parties going back and forth, and there'll be oral argument, and there'll probably be at least 6 to 12 months after that for any kind of official decision. Then they can appeal that decision. And so, yeah, it takes years.
Okay. Nathan Evershed, former prosecutor, not affiliated at all with this trial or any cases involving Kouri Richins. Thank you so much for joining us. Of course, we appreciate your time speaking with us throughout the course of this trial. And once again, with the jury reaching a verdict, we are waiting for the jury to enter back into the courtroom. And of course, we will have much more on this in our newscast on KUTV 2 News. Be sure to tune in. But for now, that's all that we have. And any closing thoughts from the trial?
No, I mean, I think everyone should just trust what the verdict is. Trust that these people are good, good citizens of our state that have weighed this, have thought about this, have deliberated about this. And apparently all of them were on the same wavelength when they walked into that jury room. There was no timetable that this had to be done this quickly, but it was done. And it looks like after 3 weeks, they really formed their opinions. They opened up that room, closed the door. It looks like all of them were believing the same thing. We'll find out what that is.
All right. Once again,